There's a secret hidden so deep that it's almost too shocking to believe. What if the person you've known your whole life, someone you trust and rely on, turns out to be tied to a world you never expected? Imagine being a billionaire with everything you could ever want. The money, the luxury, the power. And then one day, you find out that the person you've treated as nothing more than a servant, a black maid, could actually be family. This is the story of an extraordinary and jaw-dropping twist of fate that no one could have seen coming. It starts with an unlikely connection between a wealthy businessman, Victor Brooks, and his longtime maid, Tamara Johnson. Victor Brooks, known for his vast empire and glamorous lifestyle, never thought twice about Tamara. She was always just the woman who took care of his house, his children, and his needs, quietly and efficiently. But there was something about Tamara that always caught his attention. A quiet intensity, a grace that went beyond her duties, a mystery he couldn't put his finger on. For years, Tamara had worked for Victor, loyal to her job, never asking for more than what was given to her. But beneath her calm exterior, she carried a secret, one that not even she fully understood at first. Her life wasn't as ordinary as it seemed. You see, Tamara had always known she was different. She had a birthmark on her arm, something shaped like a perfect star, an unusual marking that she had carried since childhood. It wasn't just any birthmark, though. It was identical to one that Victor had, hidden away on his own shoulder. But it wasn't something she ever dared to ask about. Who would? One fateful day, the discovery of this shared birthmark sent ripples through everything. What started as an innocent conversation turned into something that neither Tamara nor Victor could have ever anticipated. They were both left with more questions than answers. Could it be possible that their shared birthmark was just a coincidence? Or was there something deeper at play here? The shock came when a chance remark about their matching marks led to an idea, one that would change both of their lives forever. Victor, curious and unsettled by the idea, pushed for answers. Tamara, I need to know, how did you end up with that mark? It's the same as mine. Tamara, shocked by the sudden intensity of his question, tried to laugh it off. It's just a birthmark, Mr. Brooks. No need to read too much into it. But Victor wasn't letting go. He insisted on taking a DNA test, something that Tamara was initially reluctant to do. But deep down, something inside her was stirring. What if she wasn't just some hired help? What if the connection between them was more profound than either of them had imagined? And so, they agreed. The results would come back in a few days, but as the waiting period stretched on, both of them were forced to reckon with the unspoken fear that maybe, just maybe, the truth would change everything. As the days ticked by, tension began to mount in their household. What had started as a simple question now felt like a ticking time bomb. Could Victor's life be about to unravel? Then, the moment arrived. The DNA results came in. Tamara opened the envelope with trembling hands, her heart pounding in her chest. And what the test revealed was nothing short of earth-shattering. The results didn't just match. They proved something that no one could have ever predicted. The truth was undeniable. Tamara wasn't just his employee. She was family. The shared birthmark, the undeniable genetic connection. It all pointed to a truth so unbelievable that it left both Victor and Tamara speechless. But what happens now? What does this revelation mean for them? For Tamara, it means that everything she thought she knew about her past, her identity, and her place in the world is suddenly turned upside down. For Victor, it means confronting a truth about his own family that he never saw coming. How is this possible? Why was Tamara never told? And what role did Victor's family play in all of this, as the two of them try to navigate the shock, the uncertainty, and the inevitable questions that follow? The story takes an even darker turn. There are forces at play, people who don't want this truth to come out. There are questions about the identity of Tamara's real parents, about what Victor's family knows, and more importantly, what they've been hiding. The deeper they dig, the more dangerous this mystery becomes. Tamara's world is unraveling, and Victor is beginning to question everything he thought he knew about his family, his past, and even his future. But the answers are just out of reach. Who can they trust? What will happen when the truth finally comes to light? And what are the consequences of opening this Pandora's box? The truth has only just begun to unfold. But one thing is certain. Neither of them will be the same after this revelation. The question now is, will they survive the storm that is about to hit? Or will the shocking truth tear everything apart? Stay tuned to find out what happens next. As the days passed since the DNA test results were revealed, an eerie silence hung over the Brooks estate. Victor could barely focus on his work. His mind kept racing back to that moment when he and Tamara had stood in the kitchen, staring at the envelope in disbelief. It was impossible, and yet there it was, irrefutable proof that their lives had just been flipped upside down. Tamara, on the other hand, was consumed by questions. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than just a shared birthmark and DNA test. How had this been kept from her for so long? Who was she really? The idea that she might be related to the very family she had served all these years was overwhelming. She had always known there was something strange about her life, the way her past was shrouded in mystery. But to find out that the Brooks family, who she had worked for so long, might be her own family, she didn't know how to process that. Victor's first instinct was to protect her, to shield her from whatever fallout might come from this revelation. But how could he? They were family, yet he had never known her, never considered her anything more than his employee. He couldn't shake the guilt that had begun to creep in. What kind of man had he been to not see the woman who had been with his family for so long as anything more? How had he failed to see the signs? And who else in his family knew the truth? Could it be that they were all involved in keeping this secret? Victor's mind raced with questions, and each one seemed to lead to more confusion. He began to dig deeper, researching his family history, trying to find anything that could explain how Tamara fit into the picture. The more he uncovered, the more he realized how little he actually knew about his own past. His parents, who had passed away years ago, had always been private people, the kind of people who didn't talk much about their pasts, who kept everything behind closed doors. Victor had never questioned it, until now. It was late one evening when he came across something that made his heart race. Hidden in an old family album, buried under stacks of documents, was a photograph of a young woman who looked strikingly familiar. She looked almost exactly like Tamara, except she was much younger, her face softer, less worn by years of hard work. Her eyes were the same, and that same star-shaped birthmark was visible on her arm. The caption beneath the photo read, "Emily Brooks, daughter of Martha and George Brooks." Emily Brooks. Victor's stomach churned. Was this a relative of his? Was this the woman who had raised Tamara? The woman who had been taken from his family? The weight of the discovery hit Victor like a ton of bricks. If this woman was indeed Emily Brooks, then Tamara wasn't just his long-lost sister. She was the daughter of a woman who had been part of the Brooks family once before. The picture seemed to be a key that unlocked a whole new level of mystery, one that Victor had never been prepared for. But this discovery raised more questions than it answered. What had happened to Emily? Why had no one spoken about her? And what was her connection to Tamara? Meanwhile, Tamara had been grappling with her own thoughts. She had always felt like an outsider in her own life, raised by her grandmother, who never spoke about her parents. Tamara had grown up with a deep sense of longing for answers. She had always known that something wasn't quite right. Why hadn't her parents ever come for her? Why had they left her in the care of her grandmother? A woman who had loved her fiercely, but never revealed the truth about her origins. Now, with the DNA test results, the pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. But even with that, Tamara didn't know who to trust. The Brooks family had never been her family, not in the way that she had imagined. They had always been the wealthy employers, the people she served from a distance. Now they were her blood relatives. But what did that mean for her? Her grandmother, who had passed away years ago, had always hinted at a family secret, something that Tamara was never old enough to understand. She had always told her, "You have a bigger destiny, Tamara. You're meant for something more." What if this secret, buried deep in her grandmother's past, had finally been uncovered? Was this what she had been talking about? Tamara could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on her. She couldn't keep living in this state of confusion, this grey area where she didn't know where she belonged. The urge to confront Victor was growing stronger every day, but she didn't know if she was ready. Was she ready to face the man she had served for so long and tell him everything she had discovered? Or would she find herself pushed away, caught in the web of lies and secrets that had been spun around her for so long? As the tension built, the cracks in Victor's perfect world began to widen. He couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong with his family's past. He had to know more, but the deeper he dug, the more dangerous it became. There were people who didn't want this truth to come out, people who would do anything to keep the past buried. The more Victor uncovered, the more he realized that this wasn't just a family secret. It was a matter of power, money, and control. As he pieced together the final fragments of the puzzle, the truth became undeniable. Emily Brooks had been a part of the Brooks family, but something had happened to her. Something dark. Something that could tear the family apart if anyone found out. And Tamara? She wasn't just the daughter of a lost relative. She was the daughter of someone who had been erased from the family history entirely. Someone who had been silenced for reasons Victor was only beginning to understand. The walls were closing in. There was no turning back now. As Victor stood in the dimly lit library, holding the final piece of evidence that could expose everything, he knew one thing for sure. Everything was about to change, and the storm that was coming might be too powerful for either of them to survive. The question was no longer just who Tamara was. It was what they would both do with this newfound truth, and how far they would go to protect themselves from the consequences of uncovering it. Victor stood frozen, the weight of the discovery bearing down on him like a ton of bricks. The final piece of evidence, an old letter hidden in the family archive, had just confirmed what he had feared. Emily Brooks, his aunt, had been removed from the family for a reason far darker than anyone could have imagined. The letter, written by Victor's father, explained that Emily had been involved in a forbidden relationship, one that violated the family's strict code of conduct. And Tamara, she was the product of that union, a secret child that had been hidden away to protect the family name. Tamara's existence had been erased, her birth concealed to protect the Brooks family legacy. Her mother, Emily, had been shunned, and her daughter had been left to grow up in the shadows, never knowing the truth of her heritage. Tamara had always felt like something was missing from her life, and now she understood why. The truth was too powerful, too dangerous to be allowed to see the light of day. Victor's heart sank as the realization hit him like a wave. He was staring at the truth. But now that he knew it, what could he do with it? Tamara, the woman he had treated as nothing more than a maid for all these years, was his niece. The birthmark they shared wasn't just a coincidence. It was the symbol of a hidden family history. The stakes had never been higher, and the consequences of revealing the truth were enormous. It could tear apart everything his family had built, his business, his reputation, and the fragile relationships he had with his remaining relatives. Victor knew he couldn't keep this secret any longer. He had to tell Tamara everything, even if it meant losing her. But when he went to find her, she was already gone. Panic surged through him. She had been overwhelmed by the truth, unsure of where she fit into this new reality. Her entire life had been a lie, and now she was alone, grappling with the enormity of the situation. She had left the Brooks estate without a word, disappearing into the night. Victor searched desperately, reaching out to her friends and colleagues, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. Days passed, and the silence grew more suffocating. It wasn't until Victor received a mysterious phone call that he learned where Tamara had gone. She had gone to the one person who might be able to give her the answers she needed. Her grandmother's old friend, a woman who had been a part of the family years ago, but had disappeared from the picture after Emily's scandal. When Victor arrived at the small, quiet house on the outskirts of town, he found Tamara sitting with the elderly woman, listening intently to the stories she had to tell. The woman's name was Ruth, and she had known everything about the secret history of the Brooks family. Ruth had been the only person who had stood by Emily when the rest of the family had turned their backs on her. She had promised Emily on her deathbed that she would protect Tamara, no matter the cost. As Ruth spoke, Victor felt his world unraveling. Every question he had asked, every fear he had held, was now being answered. The full story of Tamara's origins, the forbidden love between Emily and a man from a rival family, the shame that led to her being hidden away, and the promise Ruth had made to protect her, was laid bare. Tamara wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She was a survivor of a broken system that had sought to bury the truth. The tension between Victor and Tamara was palpable as they faced each other for the first time since the truth had come out. The look in Tamara's eyes wasn't anger or resentment. It was a deep, aching sorrow, as if she were mourning the life she could have had. She had spent so many years believing she was someone she wasn't, and now she had to come to terms with who she really was. But the question remained, what did she want from Victor? Did she want revenge, recognition, or something more? Victor, for his part, was overwhelmed with guilt. He had failed her, treated her as nothing more than an employee, never seeing the person beneath the surface. He had failed to protect her, to see the humanity in her. But now, with the truth out in the open, he was determined to make things right. "Tamara, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know. I never knew the truth. I can't change what's happened, but I want to help you, if you'll let me." Tamara didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stood up and walked to the window, her back to him. The room was thick with the weight of everything that had happened, but she could feel the shift in herself, the shift that had come with the truth. She wasn't the same person she had been before the DNA test, before the letters and the photographs. The past had shaped her, yes, but it didn't define her. She had a future to build, and it didn't have to be one dictated by the secrets of a broken family. "I'm not the same person I was, Victor," she said softly, her voice steady, "and I don't know what happens next, but I'm not going to let the past control me anymore." Victor nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. He didn't expect forgiveness. He didn't expect anything from her, except maybe a chance to help her rebuild her life. to give her the opportunities she had been denied. But Tamara had already made her decision. The truth, painful as it was, had set her free in ways she never expected. She no longer needed the approval of the Brooks family to feel complete. The two of them stood in silence, each grappling with the enormity of the revelation. But the story wasn't over. This wasn't the end for either of them. The secrets had been uncovered, the truth revealed, but the journey of healing and redemption was just beginning. And as Victor left the house that evening, he couldn't help but feel that in some strange way, everything had come full circle. The past had been buried for so long, but now it was out in the open, and it was time to face the future. For Tamara, it was a chance to reclaim her life, and for Victor, it was a chance to rebuild his family, starting with the woman he had always underestimated. The question of what the future held remained unanswered, but one thing was clear: Tamara's destiny was hers to shape, and she would do it on her own terms. And as for Victor, he had learned that sometimes the truth isn't something you can control. It's something that controls you.